Hello everyone, Wallace here, back with another episode of Rail Tech. Today's subject is track layout. So without any further ado, let's get into our first topic. Single tracking versus double tracking. These two options pretty much do exactly what they say. Single tracking will literally take half the materials, but runs the risk of carts bumping into one another and getting stranded on the line and getting knocked backwards or just sitting there waiting to cause a problem later. Double tracking solves these problems, allowing carts to move in two different directions, but it's far more expensive in both time and materials. Another point of comparison is the complexity of intersections. Single tracks are going to be much smaller scale and easier to make intersections for, while double track intersections will almost always require a full-size rail roundabout. The track that's right for you will depend on what you're doing and who you're doing it with. If you have lots of friends on your server or realm and you all enjoy using the rail system, double tracking is probably a good plan. For a single player experience or for transporting mobs like villagers, single tracks are going to be plenty. And still, plenty of use cases exist where both is the right move. You might have a double track leading in or out of spawn or a farm, and then connect up a single track to your base since you're probably the only one using that section. Next up, let's go over some options and limitations for how you lay out your tracks. First up, hills. Pushing minecarts uphill is going to require a bit more oomph than it does to push them over flats, so keep that in mind as you build, that you're going to need to space your powered rails much closer together every time you go up a hill. Next up, it's important to keep in mind that corner rails cannot climb hills and turn at the same time, so you're gonna have to space those out like seen here. Unless, of course, your goal is to drop onto a corner rail, in which case, congratulations. Detector rails have a very interesting quirk. They cannot transmit a redstone signal uphill. This can be fixed by simply spacing them out a little bit from the hill, just like the corner issue. Next up, straightaways and diagonals. Connecting a series of corner rails in a squiggly line like this looks goofy, but it will actually result in the player having a nice, smooth, straight line of movement. Because minecart velocity is based off of how many axes of travel the minecart is moving on, diagonal rails can actually move faster than straight rails since they're moving over the course of two axes. This means that this minecart here moved just under 32 regular rails with the same push-off as this minecart on the straightaway that went 20. This can be exploited by using a very tedious but often mentioned method of laying out your tracks that will make them all corner rails like this. You can see the cart on the left is moving significantly faster than the cart on the right. However, as much as this method gets talked up within the community, you'll notice you rarely see it in use. That's because this is incredibly tedious to build, which I shall now demonstrate. But first, you'll see how easy it is to accidentally reset this, because every time these rails get updated on their directions, they'll start to straighten out. So, to build this, you start with a built track, and then go one block off to the side, place a rail like this, break and replace this rail next to it, then break and replace the cross rail, one up, break and replace, break, replace one up, break and replace, so on, and so forth. You can see why this method is talked about a lot more than it's actually used. It's awkward, tedious to build, easy to mess up, and kind of fragile overall, as, like I said, accidental block updates can reset parts of it. If speed is your need, I recommend plugin or mod implementations instead. They're just generally going to be a lot easier. This is also a directional method, so it can fall victim to the southeast rule pretty easily. And of course, any tracks you build like this are going to be one way because they'll just get turned off if they're going in this direction. Before I move on to the builds I want to showcase for this episode, I want to quickly go over some options for how you can power your rails. There's two types of methods. Inline, where the power comes from, the track itself, which would be these redstone blocks or these detector rails, or external, like this lever. Now, obviously, the lever design is going to be the cheapest, but the redstone blocks and detector rails are going to be easier to blend into whatever design aesthetic you have for your rail, since it's part of the structure. If you do build with the detector rails, keep in mind what I said earlier about uphills, and you should be fine. And now, finally, I want to go over 3 small but mighty designs for track switches that help you manage your tracks. First up is this simple wrong way cart filter. These designs have been around for absolutely ages, and they're pretty much a staple. I think it was Seth Bling who originally popularized them. They're extremely simple. Carts going the wrong way will get turned onto this track, and carts going the right way will keep on keeping on. If you're building single tracks and you want to keep, traffic going one way, these are extremely useful, and you can mirror them on either side if you're doing double tracks. Keep in mind, though, that these are directional, and you'll need to power these corner rails for lines that run either north or west. South and east will be fine if they're just unpowered. Next up is a double track version of the same thing. This one is even simpler and has a bonus use case to it. The track switch here is extraordinarily simple to build. You just need these 3 rails and one of the corners to be powered, and you're set. Boom. Carts going the wrong way will get filtered onto the other side of the track, and carts going the right way will just keep on keeping on. The other great use case for this is as a merger or splitter, where a double track turns into a single track. Like I said earlier, maybe you have a busy double track section coming from spawn, and then it goes to your base, and that's not quite as busy. So this will merge or filter the carts, so that way they're using the right set of tracks. Last, but certainly not least, is this freight filter. Players that are in minecarts can set off tripwires, so we can use that to send them in one direction, and then we can send minecarts with chests or minecarts with hoppers into another direction. We can also switch it up a little bit and have this be an empty minecart collection system, where a minecart with nobody in it is going to get sent into the cactus to get collected by this chest here, and a minecart with someone in it will get sent along. Well, guys, that's going to wrap up this episode of Rail Tech. Let me know down in the comments if you found this information useful, and feel free to yell at me if there's something I missed. I hope you learned something, and until next time, I'm Wallace, and remember to take it easy.